Good evening.
Excellent.
I'm Hilary. I'm Indigo. And we're from The Full Blossom of the Evening, a podcast about David Lynch and Twin Peaks. So obviously today we're here to introduce Blue Velvet, which is a movie that we love so much. And we recently did an episode where we focused a lot on David Lynch's inspirations for this film. Yeah, our podcast is about motifs, resonances, and illusions across David Lynch's work. It's like a niche within a niche. But we already have listeners in over 35 countries on 6 continents and in almost all 50 states. And we've only been around since May, so that's pretty good. We've been chugging along. So these white picket fences and suburban vistas of Blue Velvet that you see up here on the screen, they're some of the most memorable images of this film. And this vision has a tangible source in the pages of a book. So this book that you see here, Good Times on Our Street, is a children's basal reader from the 1940s. Lynch has referred to it in many interviews and has spoken directly about it as an influence on Blue Velvet. So as you can see this quote here from Christine McKenna from Room to Dream, she described it as a children's book that permanently lodged itself in David's mind. This book is similar to like the Dick and Jane books, things like that. Like those are probably more popular ones that you would recognize. But he grew up reading these, and the imagery in them, you can see a lot of it in like the colorful scenes. So like for example, these ones here, you can see like literally the white picket fence, the roses. It's kind of how David formed this idea and this image of like, you know, the cute, wholesome, suburban imagery. In 1990, Lynch spoke about his childhood and this book, Good Times on Our Street, in an interview with the French magazine Positif. Describing Good Times on Our Street, Lynch said, "It talks about happiness, everyday surroundings, and being good neighbors. For a young American who comes from a well-to-do family, paradise should be like the street where he lives. I was brought up in that kind of setting, wooden fences and old houses. In my childhood mindset, everything seemed serenely beautiful. Airplanes went slowly by in the sky, rubber toys floated in the water, meals seemed to last 5 years, and a nap seemed endless. Everything was pleasant, and Good Times on Our Street recreated that scenario." And Blue Velvet also recreates that scenario. The bright colors and jolly scenes of Lynch's beloved children's book are mirrored by Jeffrey and Sandy's neighborhood in the film. And we've got some more images from the book that sort of parallel scenes. We've got the waving fireman.
He's cut off, unfortunately. Trust us that that fireman at the top is waving.
Yeah. But of course, this isn't all of Blue Velvet. And it isn't all of life either. Lynch has repeatedly told a story from his own life when another side of life, a darker side, crashed into his childhood. Yeah, so Lynch says, "I was out one night with my brother, and we were down at the end of the street. Everything is lit up at night now, but in the 50s, in small towns like Boise, there were streetlights, but they were dimmer, and it was much darker. It makes night kind of magical because things go into the black. So we were down at the end of the street at night, and out of the darkness, it was so incredible, came this nude woman with white skin. Maybe it was something about the light and the way she came out of the darkness, but it seemed to me that her skin was the color of milk, and she had a bloodied mouth. She couldn't walk very well, and she was in bad shape, and she was completely naked. I'd never seen that, and she was coming toward us, but not really seeing us. My brother started to cry and sat down on the curb. I wanted to help her, but I was young and I didn't know what to do. I might have asked, 'Are you okay? What's wrong?' But she didn't say anything. She was scared and beat up, but even though she was traumatized, she was beautiful." So we left these images on the screen on purpose to emphasize just how jarring this experience was for Lynch. This is what his childhood looked like and felt like. And then this woman appears, a victim of some horrific violence, a vision of a completely different world on our street.
This juxtaposition is so characteristic of Lynch's work. You know, it's part of the dictionary definition of the term Lynchian. But another distinctively Lynchian element we see is that his first exposure to this other world, this darkness, isn't through the specious glamour of a violent criminal, but it's through the unspeakable suffering of the victim of that violence. It doesn't seem like an accident that this little boy grew up to make Laura Palmer the center of so much of his work.
We'll see a clear allusion to this scene from Lynch's childhood right here in Blue Velvet. Instead of helpless children, young adults capable of helping will find the victim. Maybe Lynch was trying to re-inhabit that moment and do what he would have done if he'd been old enough to help the woman who came out of the dark.
But even in darkness, Blue Velvet tells us there is hope. And its most important symbol of hope also comes from Good Times on Our Street. The return of the robins is a key story in the book. So this image from Good Times on Our Street of Jim and Judy gazing at the robins is mirrored in this one of Jeffrey and Sandy. Lynch was so committed to this vision for the ending of Blue Velvet that he had to go to some extreme lengths to get it. And Indigo loves this story.
I do. So, as many of you probably know, I feel like it's kind of a fan favorite thing to talk about how creepy the robin is in the movie. That's because it's not alive. So in Room to Dream, they talk about the story of how the robin came to be. So robins in their nests are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and so you can't just like catch a robin and use it for your film. So Fred Caruso found a trainer who said he had trained a robin, but when it was brought to the set, it was like molting and sad and couldn't work for David's vision of this like beautiful robin. And then it just so happened that a robin flew into the side of a school bus and died nearby, and people knew that they were looking for a robin, so they were notified. It was stuffed by a taxidermist, and they got to work. David mounted the robin on a windowsill and put a live bug in its mouth. And now we had a stuffed robin that didn't move. So David took monofilament threads, tied them to the robin's head so it would move, and then got down in the bushes below the window and manipulated the threads. Not horrifying at all.
It's like the robins absolutely had to return under all circumstances, right? At the end of Blue Velvet, just as they return in Good Times on Our Street. You know, it's easy to watch a David Lynch film and focus only on the surreal, the outlandish, the horrifying elements. But equally important to Lynch's vision and artistry is the light. This quotation from Lynch on Lynch captures it. Gathering up darkness, exploring it the way Jeffrey does in this film, opens up a greater capacity for light. The robins returning means something more because we've been to the world of Frank Booth.
So that is our presentation. So we just wanted to go If you are interested in hearing more, we have a full episode where we go over all of that stuff in much more detail for probably hour and a half, almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in what we just talked about and you'd like to hear more, we have a whole episode. And these are some places where you can listen to us. Pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts, you can find us. You can also follow us at Full Blossom of the Evening on Instagram. And we also have stickers out by the register in case you want to grab some, if you like the logo, and want to remember us. And you can follow this QR code to our Podbean to easily link to any of these sites to listen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.